So nice to be with you this Saturday morning, and thank you for joining from wherever you may be in the world. I'm very grateful to have been invited by Gyodo Sensei to be a guest for our second monthly Dharma dialogue with One Body Sangha. And I'm going to not be in charge today, so I'll turn it over. And we're really glad that you could join for conversation and shooting the Dharma breeze, as I like to say. Yeah, welcome everyone.
Welcome, everyone. Are you handing it over to me, Sokyo?
I am. All yours.
Okay, very good. Well, it's really great to see everyone. I'm Gyodo Sensei, for those of you who I don't know. I see a few new faces. I'm outside of my normal environs, which is in Colorado, in Boulder. I'm currently out in southern Connecticut, which is where I grew up, and I'm spending a week with my parents out here in their facility. I've got a guest room, so it's a pleasure to join everyone, under these circumstances. This one body sangha is a experiment in supporting people in practice where they are, home practice, you could say, but wherever they are, with less of an emphasis on a particular place-based practice and more on coming together across space and time with the tools that we have available now with technology and supporting each other. So it's a real, as I see it, it's an emergent form of Sangha, taking advantage of what we have available that, generations past didn't have available. And I see it to be a kind of an adaptive form as our, social structures are changing and communities are becoming more fragmented, that this is a way to kind of come together and support this real millennia's old practice, but in a new form. So I'm committed to not preparing anything for these Dharma dialogues, just kind of engaging with what is alive, with me and my dialogue partner. And I certainly would love to, be responsive to wherever you find yourself and any questions you have. So I think what we'll do is Sokyo and I will just kind of start rapping and ask each other some questions and answers, and maybe spark off each other. And as you have any questions, maybe put them in the chat. You put them in the chat to everybody, so everybody can see them, and we won't lose them. And Sokyo and I can tap into those, as things unfold. How does that sound? Yeah, very good. All right. Well, Sokyo, so how's your practice these days? What's alive for you?
Mm. Well, right now in Boulder, there was a rain that came through and a drop in temperature. And so right now, actually, I'm really appreciating some coolness in my daily life and with practice. So I often enjoy sitting outside. So it's been quite warm lately. So that's been lovely to be with the rain and kind of different smells that come up with that. Yeah, so that's in the very immediate moment. That's what's alive for me. I get to wear my wraps and um, my cozy clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. It's such an interesting thing to me what you're doing in the form of this pilgrimage, and many of you know, but perhaps not all of you, that Sokyo is entering the end of her third year of pilgrimage. So she practiced with me for several years, 8 perhaps, um, as a very committed, student in our more traditional form with the Zen Center here in Boulder, and saw me frequently in Dokusan, and became a leader of our center, managing the liturgy and uh, helping others, in their practice. And then, her karma was such that she adopted this, felt strongly drawn to go off on a pilgrimage, and she can say more about that. But what I see it to be is it's kind of like it's a very old form of practice, the pilgrimage. So she's kind of gone back to a very old form, but in the midst of these very, very new contemporary conditions. So I think maybe, what you're doing here is almost like maybe this is where Zen practice might be moving more towards is people who are kind of pilgrimaging through their life and not necessarily, staying in one place for 20 years, which is what traditional Zen practice has been, kind of, parking with a Sangha and with a teacher for 15 or 20 years and to undergo, the intense Zen training that we typically do. And of course, the One Body Sangha is a bit more of a kind of open-ended sort of platform for work. But I have an inkling that maybe what you're doing might actually be more in the direction of what many people, particularly in Western culture, might be the form of Zen practice. So, what do you think? Is it working, and do you think it's going to work for others?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate touching on that. And even as you were mentioning, having been there in person with the Sangha for so many years, and then I left, and it was a big departure for me, and perhaps for the Sangha in some ways. And I remember, and still to this day, reading stories about this happening all the time.
Mhm.
You'll read about teachers that Dogen went and traveled in China for many, many years, and Hakuin and many others. And it was actually quite normal to go and explore and maybe to meet other teachers along the way, but most importantly, to live a little bit more of an itinerant life. Centuries ago. And in some ways, even just, if you will, just economically and politically, as we went through various different revolutions, people became more home-based and monastic-based if you were practicing, because there were places where you could do that. And I do find culturally, that today, our Western culture is much more dispersed, and the idea of having kind of one place where you live your whole life is actually fairly rare when I meet someone who's done that. So it's already, people are a little bit more untethered to a particular place. But I think, especially in the last maybe 5 to 7 years, a lot of you've probably heard about van life and bus life, and the pandemic, I think, really uprooted a lot of people and also moved people more to want to be outside and in nature when they couldn't gather together. So there's sort of been this movement, if you will, to moving around a little bit more. And there have been many, many more people living in the way that I have been living. That said, I think that embarking on it as a spiritual path is unique to
Mhm.
to say, I'm not just hanging out living in my bus, but there is an intention here, both in maintaining my practice as I travel and wherever I meet, and bringing kind of a spirit to that that then allows that practice to continue even with connection with Sangha, no matter where I am. So it's not, I've had a lot of people ask, like, oh, what's that like to retreat, if you will, from the real world and then come back into it? And I view this very differently. This is more retreating into the world. And I think that's a practice anyone can embrace in different ways. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a full-time traveling kind of spirit, but that spirit of going into the world and seeing what's there and meeting it directly. I do highly recommend, for me at least, part of pilgrimage is shaking up the conventional, conditioned ways of living. So, whatever form that might be for someone, I do think there's something to that. And whether that's short-term pilgrimage or wandering, or just disrupting your daily life in some form. And I have some other things to say as an artist about that. I think it's immensely valuable to shake up the familiar and to see the world with new eyes.
And that's why I've got a follow-up question for you, Sokyo. So, what is it that you feel you maybe have lost a little bit from not being more place-based the way most of us are? And for those of us who like really romanticize what you're doing and want to do it ourselves at some level, give us the appreciation, for what we're getting from being more place-based.
Yeah, the nitty gritty, the real. I do like to I like to pop that balloon of there can be this illusion of, oh,
Yeah.
you've just gone off and let go of all your responsibilities and everything, and
You're such a free spirit.
such a free spirit. Yeah, and and there are dimensions to that. It's not for everyone. I will say that there is a certain way of living that I think I've been called to for a while that aligned more with this maybe than for some. But you've asked me this question over time during my pilgrimage, and I think it's a really good one that, some of the things that I've traded, if you will, so there's trade-offs. Um, uh, that I like to call it the juice, the deep juice of being in real physical proximity, relationship with people that I love and care about. That's a very real loss. That's something that I miss deeply. And now I'm in Boulder and I get to be with my Sangha for a month. I usually come through for a summer residency, if you will. And it just takes my breath away. I mean, this is now my third time doing this, and each time I feel it even more profoundly, how much I miss so many of my Dharma sisters and brothers, and and probably more importantly, that when I'm with them, how much I feel that, um, how much more love and electricity there is in real embodied relationship with other people that we care about and love. I'm going to see Shoan later this afternoon, who I haven't seen in person in a year, and I just can't wait to hug him. Can't wait to hug you. Just that, it brings tears to me, so that is a real loss. And even though I have and intentionally engage in relationship with other people along the way that I meet, it's different. It's different. The people that I love so deeply are so far away. So that's one, I would say. The other is just the energy it takes of daily living is very different. And I noticed that very early on when I first moved into the bus. I was still parked here in Boulder for a little while I got some things done on the engine. But I started living in it. And within a week, I was like, oh, I'm so tired all the time. And I couldn't figure out why. And then it dawned on me that all of the energy that's usually kind of taken care of by other devices, even refrigerators and vehicles and all the conveniences of modern life, just to support my daily living, I was having to expend the energy in order to do those things. Uh, and so in my travels, usually I might move every week or two. And the movement, that day of movement, the resupply day, getting food, water, maybe propane, refueling, off and on, 105-degree day if it's starting to get warm. Just the amount of energy it takes to do that. Perhaps I'm getting laundry done somewhere. I need to find a place to do that. It is a throwback to earlier days when much of our energy was spent just figuring out how to eat and feed ourselves and clothe ourselves and bathe ourselves, right? So that's been, I wouldn't say it's a loss at all, but it's something that I think the glamorous
Mhm.
story of living in this way misses. Just that. And I will say the gift it's brought is that such an awareness of the amount of energy it takes to support life and such intimacy with the resources that are involved in that. I know exactly how much water I have at any given time. And am already kind of feeling into where and when might I need to resupply. So there's a great intimacy with that too. Yeah. I don't know what myths do you hold, Gyodo, about pilgrimage that I might be able to pop those balloons too, or what's your idea or imagination of what I'm doing out here?
Yeah, no, I don't think I have too many romanticized notions. I got my yayas out, in my 20s and 30s, so I don't need to do that. Um, I mean, in terms of my path, as many of you know, I adopted family responsibilities late in my life. So I got married at age 55 and 56 and took on five stepkids. So that, which is more a conventional path for people in our culture, is like a wild, crazy adventure for me.
That's its own pilgrimage. Yeah. Both
Yeah,
have embarked at the same time, but in different forms. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So um, I'm just mindful of how we each have our own karma, and our karma draws us to take ownership of and bring loving attention to, and ultimately to take responsibility for our karma, the conditions. And that presents itself to us in very unique ways. So some of us are drawn, or at least have an opportunity, to investigate some wounds, deeper wounds or deeper questions about our spiritual nature earlier in our life. And some of us, our karma draws us to take care and ownership and responsibility for other people, for a long stretch of their life if they have a family. And it's difficult to do a committed, spiritual practice at the level of, what say monks of old did and what some people, do now, while maintaining, a full family responsibilities and work responsibilities. So we have to, we're just called to take full responsibility for all the dimensions of our life: the personal, the relational, the professional, um, in with the greatest capacity and the greatest grace, that we can. And each of our paths is very unique. It's something that I'm very mindful of. And our social system, one of the benefits of it is that it does, support a variety of different, expressions and life paths. Whereas the more traditional Eastern cultures that, Zen and Buddhism came out of, it didn't have that challenge. It was pretty tracked in terms of how you did these things. But we're still figuring it out, how to have a whole life practice, that includes strong meditation practice, but also really showing up fully in these other areas. So, yeah, I actually don't romanticize anything. I just I appreciate my own unique path. So there's nobody in the world I'd rather be than me. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. It's like I've got this incredible opportunity to just be myself and to meet, the responsibilities and challenges that face my life. So, wish that I were Jeff Bezos with all this money, or Elon Musk, or all this. That's like it actually that's a hellacious to me, to like be in that situation. It's just not meaningful at all. What's meaningful to me is this karmic embodiment, that have found myself in, and what I can make of this, and how I can awake to this. It's miraculous.
Yeah. And I see that as the spirit of practice that I remember before I left, even before I felt the calling into pilgrimage in this form, but my Zen practice was deepening, and I was having a discussion with a Dharma sister about she was considering entering a monastery and living in a more monastic way, and we were talking about that, and she had asked me, have you ever thought about that? And I had considered it. But there are life circumstances where that wouldn't lead, I couldn't do that. Two of them named Miko and Thomas, my cats. And at the time I was caring for my mother but I remember having, it was very clear to me of, um, and I can't remember quite the words I said to her exactly, but it was something along the lines of, I think I'm going to enter into that spirit of practice, but just right here in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I had done something similar with graduate school before I had the circumstances where I could go to graduate school. I had wanted to study some things, but I didn't have the finances or the life circumstances where I could do that. And I remember thinking, well, I'm just going to go to graduate school without going to graduate school. And I like developed a whole curriculum and things I wanted to read and study. And I had like dedicated hours at the library and everything. And I did that for almost a year. And it actually led to the development of some thinking and practice within my artistic realm that then led to other things and eventually graduate school. And I kind of think of Zen in a similar way that we can bring that intention of, oh, I really am going to meet my practice as wholeheartedly and with as much dedication as I can, right where I am. Yeah, I'll become a monk without becoming a monk. And uh,
Mm-hmm.
that it really is just to me the orientation and the intention that we set out for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Yeah, become a monk without becoming a monk. Yeah. I think that the word monk, I think, comes from the same root as mono, so like a single, right? So it's just a singular focus. And I think if we can all do that, we bring a singular focus to our life. Um, there's a lot to handle there, but if we just take it, one step at a time, one breath at a time, which is what Zen is all about, then I think we can do that. Be a monk without being a monk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm curious if people have questions. Yeah, I know some of you. I don't know others. Oh, we've got something here from Odin. With the Zen peacemakers, we had the translator Red Pine, who explored the hermitage tradition in China. Hermitage dates back before Buddhism and was often a sign of protesting the government, where the court teachers would go off into hermitage. Hermitage dates back into shamanic traditions. Do you feel there's a difference between hermitage and pilgrimage? I ask because I have the impression that you thought you were going into hermitage. Are you far enough yet, Sokyo? Of course, I think you call it a hermitage on wheels, which maybe combines hermitage and pilgrimage. But yeah, I'll let you answer that one, Sokyo.
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, one thinks of the hermit as someone who lives off in the middle of wherever and with no contact with anyone. And there is certainly practice. Um, and my understanding is that there's also been an interweaving of hermitage practice and pilgrimage practice for centuries as well. Um, I can remember hearing about, I think they're Christian mystics who similarly kind of left the conventional world partly in protest to find another way to live. But they ended up, even while they were embracing a hermitage-like lifestyle, many of them also would travel together and come together at different times. Um, and I find myself living similarly, so I tend to alternate between times where I'm in deep hermitage, where I'm in solitude from at least from other people. I don't feel in solitude in other ways, but it's intentional that I have time, sometimes 4, 5, 6 weeks, where I'm not meeting or engaging with anyone else. And then I'll intentionally camp where I know I might engage with someone else. Either I'll happen to be in a place or I'll move to a place where I know there might be other people camping, and then I'll kind of engage as the public-private realm seems to be negotiated sometimes in those places. And other times I'm called to, a friend of mine who does retreat, a practice with walking with trees, invited me to go and go into retreat with her in the sequoias this past fall. So I knew I was going to be in relationship and in community there. So mine tends to be a blend. It is a hermitage on wheels. So it can function in both ways. And I think that that dynamic between solitude and in community is a really rich one. I think I read even who is it? I'm going to blank right now on one of the Christian mystics who he would spend great amounts of time in community in the monastery, and then he would go and solo pilgrimage, and then he would go and do talks. And he spoke in his biography that all three of those were informed and how important the relationship was between those three different ways of practice.
Hmm. Yeah, I'll add my voice to that off of that last part about, there are differences, yeah, between hermitage and pilgrimage, and they both bring something, maybe part of a triad of forms. Um, we have a senior in our center, Jodo, who's on a hermitage retreat, a 3-week hermitage retreat right now. So I think that's something that, is available for many of us, to do something like that. And again, I just come back to like our own karma and what's right for you. None of these paths are like right for everybody. But a talk like this is something that can bring up the possibilities of things like perhaps pilgrimage and hermitage, and might spark something in you. But you should always look at it as, is it something that I'm really called to do? Not like, oh, that's what I have to do, or that's the way it's done in order to awaken. None of this is mandatory. It's most important to really understand your own conditions and your own aspirations for practice, and then these forms may inspire you in more or less ways.
Hmm.
And we have a comment that I think the monk who perhaps you were referring to, Sokyo, might have been Thomas Merton, or lived a long time in the community of the monastery and then lived alone on the property but far from the community. That was in Kentucky, of
It's
course.
actually someone else, but yeah, I was familiar with Merton as well, and I think that that kind of alternating between seemed to be kind of a common practice. Yeah, yeah. Mm. Any other
Can
questions?
I follow up on that? Because thank you very much for this. When you first came back after your first year, and you related to how, as you were starting off, you said you had this voice in your head, "Are you far enough?" And I was wondering how that relationship to that question and that time period in your life has changed, and whether you still feel that running away or running to, or is that even a question now, or is that the wrong question? Yeah, so do you remember that, you having that moment? Yeah. So you
Yeah, that,
won't mind. Thanks.
thank you. Yeah, for following up. I saw that at the bottom and wanted to was curious about
Hmm.
um, in particular. And what Odin's referring to, I gave a talk a couple years ago in my first year of pilgrimage. And that first year was very, I called it rewilding. It was a kind of radical time of shedding a lot of ways of being and roles and things in the world. But I was very aware of, Sensei's been mentioning karma, my own karma in my life was avoidant, was to run away. And I had done backpacking for many, many years, solo backpacking, or perhaps just with my dog. And I was aware then that it was a retreat from the world. It was a way that, in some ways, served because it helped me to regulate a nervous system that felt really activated a lot of time. Um, and it also served in a not so healthy way to create just more distance from me and being with other people, which at the time was really difficult for me, just given some of my own conditioning and circumstances and experiences with trauma in my life. So it was protective, but it was also a distorted form of that. And that phrase that Hoden mentioned had been that was well before my pilgrimage. I think it was maybe a good 8, 9 years before, and I was on a backpacking trip in the middle of nowhere. I mean, just tens of miles away from anyone. And I had this realization of, oh, are you far enough away now? Kind of calling myself out on what I was doing. How far away can I get from everybody and then feel okay in myself? So I related that story in my first year because I was just very conscious of that impulse, that karmic impulse to avoid and run away. And it was important to me that this wasn't that. It was very important to me that this wasn't that. And so even in that first year, I was really watching that edge and paying attention to how much was I avoiding and how much was I engaging. Was I moving into the world or was I retreating from it? And I'm happy to say that I had done enough healing and work both spiritually and therapeutically by then that it didn't feel that way at all. It felt like the retreat into the world that I had wanted it and felt called to do. In fact, I had someone message me that first year and, oh, how are you doing in all that solitude, and what's coming up? And I said, I'm actually not as alone as I thought I would be. I'm meeting all these people out here. And in a way, because I was more isolated and in solitude, even more than ever in my life, but I was in a different place with um, how I wanted to relate and how important relationship was. I was reaching out more to folks back in Boulder, people all over the world that I know. I was in more relationship after I left than I was before. And I think it's because I disrupted just some of those habit patterns of, oh yeah, I can see them anytime and I don't really feel up to it and I'll get back to them later. It's sort of like it pushed me into deeper into relationship rather than the opposite. And I find that to be true today. So that's been a real gift of the pilgrimage is both getting to see myself and how I'm relating differently in the world, and also to by necessity, I have to reach out and connect with people in order to maintain relationship, and that's really important to me today.
Mhm. I really love those questions, Hoden, and I really loved your answers, Sokyo, your response to it. That's a great koan. Are you far enough yet? Are you far enough yet? We all have a version of that. Am I there yet? Have I
Yeah.
accomplished this? Did I make the right decision? Right? And there's a way of answering those questions from our story, from our head. Am I far enough yet? Well, what was my objective in going? Well, there's a story around that. Was there objective of going, and then have I satisfied that? But to really work with it as a koan is you get to a level. It's like, well, what does that even mean? I'm just there's no far enough. I'm right here.
Hmm.
I'm right here. There's no far enough. As soon as we introduce the notion of enoughness, that's the root of suffering. That's dukkha, insufficiency, not enoughness. Whenever you have that word in your mind, is there enough? Am I far enough? Do I have enough? You realize you're experiencing right the root of dukkha, of suffering. So a koan is to say, well, what's going on? What does that mean? What does that even mean? What stories am I telling myself that I don't have enough or that I need to get a certain amount in order for it to be enough? And when we really penetrate that koan, then we're just right here. Yes, it's more than enough. Right, we're right where we are. But that's, we do usually need to get through a lot of conditioning and a lot of story in order to really live that. Have you? I heard that process in your answer. So
Yeah, very much. Yeah. For me, that was a real turning point. Even I didn't have koan in mind in that way at the time, but I really heard it as a wake up bell of,
mm,
wait a minute. First of all, where am I going? Um, why do I even think it's possible to get anywhere away from whatever it is I'm running away from? It was that like, wherever you go, there you are kind of realization. which I feel like a lot of this pilgrimage has been just moving back into exactly that. So it was a clarion call of what are you running away from, and why do you think you can actually run away?
Yeah.
Other questions. These are great. Yeah, Envy, go ahead.
Um, I have a question about intimacy and freedom. Um,
Mhm.
I'm finding it, I'm finding in myself that the strongest desire that I have also holds the biggest fear. It's the same, wanting deep intimacy and total freedom. And there's something that feels like choosing one sacrifices the other, but there also feels like some kind of overlap where there's also something where they come together. And I'm just curious, I guess, about your relationship with freedom and intimacy as it relates to your travels and your journey and how you're living. I kind of want to know something from you, Sensei, too, about freedom and intimacy too, if I
Yeah.
can.
Great question, and may I'll let Sokyo go first.
Yeah. Um, my experience for a long time, intimacy didn't mean freedom in my story and what I had experienced of that. And so I had a resistance, great resistance to that, and a great fear of that. And uh, and same thing with vulnerability, which I think is related because I think I can't be intimate unless I can be vulnerable. Um, and I had a great fear of being vulnerable. And that some of you may have heard the root of that is vulnerable is woundable. So um,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
didn't I didn't want to be woundable because I had been wounded in intimate relationships quite a bit. And so I equated all of that with danger, with lack of safety, and ultimately with lack of freedom, because to me, freedom was not being able to be wounded, being able to live my life without that distress and risk and all of that. What that created, though, for me was such a protected, walled off life. I wasn't free at all. I mean, that's the irony of it is I wasn't free at all. And it was only, again, through a lot of healing, a lot of recovery work, and a lot of spiritual practice and willingness to be vulnerable in all of those realms that helped me to experience the real strength that comes from vulnerability and to realize, oh, actually, in certain ways, that's actually where my safety is when I can be really intimate with the situation. Then I can respond clearly with my own strength and my own power, right? And then I have real freedom. And not to mention that I'm not living with all these walls anymore. And so I am experiencing the whole diversity of the emotional landscape that comes with that intimacy, great joy and great fear and all of it all together. And to me, that's really what freedom is to be able to experience all that. Now I say that, but there were times in my life where I couldn't be in that way. I couldn't be that intimate and be okay. My nervous system, given the trauma that was held in my body in those times, it actually wasn't safe for me to just feel everything all at the same time. So a lot of the meditation coaching that I do today comes with training around trauma informed and my own experience with trauma informed practice that allows that embodiment, that real intimacy to develop over time and at a pace that is right for my body, which might be different than others. But I have found through that work uh, how much strength and aliveness and great freedom there is in the intimacy. Yeah, and my experience with that. And I would also love to hear what Sensei has to say.
Yeah, but a beautiful question again, absolute core koan. Yeah, and may this is a core koan for all of us human embodied beings. Is this push pull between intimacy and freedom? Very much so, and it's something that we live out through the course of our lives. It's not something that we solve, but it's an ever more deepening dance um, if you embrace it as a dance. If you turn yourself with your own spiritual practice, towards it. And I'll say also that it's something that, again, getting at Western culture's version of this koan is different from Eastern culture's version. I think the culture that or traditions came from Chinese and Japanese primarily, that where Zen came from. I think they understood intimacy actually really well. We have a language of intimacy in Zen. Not knowing is most intimate is one of our key teachings. So that real intimacy with other beings and with the natural world and with ourselves and our own bodies is very much an explicit part of our tradition. But freedom means just different things, in different cultures. Now, the deepest level of freedom, Sokyo, that you ended with, is common to humanity, to really be free to be yourself as yourself, at the highest level. That, of course, is what we're talking about. But there's all sorts of kind of conditioned levels of freedom that's very different in the Eastern society than it is in Western. So we have our ideas of freedom about doing what I want to do, having the ability to exercise my will, having my preferences and having those be important, being self-actualized and individuated according to, my value system, the Western value system. Freedom means something, very different and something very powerful actually for us. And there's definitely a push-pull with intimacy because you can't really be, well, let's say intimacy requires us to give up preferences and defense mechanisms and our exercise of our will and sometimes opportunities in order to, be intimate in certain ways. So for me personally, that's one of the core koans for getting married, right? How am I willing to, what sort of trade-off am I willing to make here? I want intimacy with another person, maybe, hopefully you're getting married, you want that because you're going to get it. And what level of constraint on my freedoms am I willing to give up for that? So I had a certain calculation on that for the majority of my adult life. I didn't want to be constrained, so I was never intimate, at a real deep level with a partner, but I was intimate with my own self and my own mind. That's what I wanted to be intimate with. And so I gave up. I committed to certain practice in a certain way, and I limited my freedom, say, to get married or to pursue certain things because I was committed to becoming intimate with my true nature. That was the trade-off. Now that kind of shifted form, 10 years ago when I decided to actually get married, and so I lost freedom of action in that area, but now I have the opportunity to become intimate with another person and become relationally intimate, and also with the part of myself that, is relationally intelligent and wise, although, my wife wouldn't use those terms for me. But certainly intimacy, is something that, we're both committed to, and I am too. So, yeah, it's an ongoing koan for everybody, and we never crack the code, but we develop better. Speaking for myself, I've developed a better ability to just embrace that as a koan every day. Yeah.
I'm really struck by as you were talking about the things that we have to let go of, whether that's, ways of being in the world or things that we want to do then there's this compromise. But I think it's touching on a much deeper part of our practice too, which is letting go. I mean, that's a core practice of letting go of ideas and opinions of how I think I want my life to go, or what I think I want things to be, or even what I think this relationship is. Right. So this quality of surrender into not knowing, which might touch into, I saw Tetsuji has a question that he posted about the practice of not knowing. I feel like these are somewhat related, but earlier we were talking about the spirit of Zen practice, and part of that for me has been this quality of surrender into the moment, into the reality of who I am and what's happening right now. Yeah.
Um, I see. Did you address Tetsuji's question about not knowing, or do you want to take that one on? And then he's got a question for me there too that you can.
Wonderful. So yeah, Tetsuji said, I also recall the talk you gave after your first year of pilgrimage. You emphasized many aspects of not knowing. How has your experience of not knowing evolved over the last 3 years? Have your expectations changed? And then a follow-up, not to be too personal, but I wonder if Gyodo could describe how he sees your involvement over the last 3 years. I think that for Gyodo to determine. Yeah, I gave a talk last week with Eon Zen as well, and the link is on the Eon Zen site. And we didn't record the discussion afterwards, but there was a really good question which Seiju, who's here tonight, had of how has this practice of not knowing kind of continued to evolve in my life, and how do I see that functioning. That's been a core practice for the pilgrimage, certainly, and it started out very intentionally. I embraced that as a practice to see what that would be like to live with that, and right from the very beginning, as much as we say we're practicing not knowing in Zen, it's actually really, really, really hard to do, particularly really hard to do all the time, and we move in and out of knowing and not knowing kind of mind, and that's just normal. I mean, from the before I even left, people were asking me, "Oh, where are you going to go? And are you going to visit this and do that?" And I found myself right away like starting to answer. And oh yeah, I might do this, and I think I might go visit that Zen center, and then I realized that none of it was true. I was just making because I felt this pull both to answer. So, and even that's a form of knowing of like, oh yeah, I'm going to give this person something that they're asking for. And it's much harder and when I saw myself doing that, I caught it and I said, okay, I'm not going to answer in that way anymore. I don't know. I don't know where I'm going, what I'm doing, how it's all going to unfold. And it was harder initially to hold that. So Tetsuji asked specifically how this has evolved. And I think that's just because there was just so much conditioning for me in having a response, and it felt more vulnerable to say I don't know. Like I really don't know. And to say it not in a glib kind of way, like the Zen answer of, oh, I don't know. No, this was like for real. I don't know. It felt really vulnerable to say that. And but what I found is that when I would do that, the other person would often kind of light up with the same, fear and excitement kind of meet in the same place. And we would both be like, oh, yeah, really? Oh, yeah. No, I really don't know. And this huge smile would come over their face and mine. And that was my first clue to the aliveness that comes with really not knowing. So holding that as a practice throughout, anytime anyone would ask, where am I going? Anytime I would ask myself, I would sort of feel into maybe where I might go next in the pilgrimage. And I would catch myself if I had ideas and be like, I don't actually know where I'm going to go. I'll figure that out later. This smile would come up, this aliveness, and embracing that every day over and over and over again. it just has become much more just how I live, and that aliveness has opened up in lots of different ways, and it's really quite joyful. In my third year of pilgrimage, I have found, because I know many more places where I can camp and have been around a lot of the West, having traveled for 3 years now, I have caught myself a few times having to continue to push myself, like as I go through a certain area. I'll think about a place where, oh, I know I can go there, and I loved that place last time I was there, and that was great, and it'll be wonderful again. And when I was traveling through Utah on my way through to Colorado this earlier this summer, I had some of that because I knew some good places to camp. Um, but I was really curious, what else is out here? Where have I not been? And I ended up camping in the most amazing, amazing canyon in Bears Ears National Monument that's now in my like top 3 of places ever. Just deeply, deeply sacred. Um, and I would not have made my way to that if I had not let go of my opinions and preferences and judgments. And I think that's very true for our life. Like, we don't know what we're missing when we hold on to uh, what we think we should do or be, or all of the different preferences that we might have. There's a whole world out there waiting for me that I haven't discovered, and I won't discover if I don't allow the opportunity to unfold as I go, rather than um, having it prescribed. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and add some response. Really great question, Tetsuji. And as always, the koan is often embedded within the wording of the question. And you asked, have your expectations changed? So expectations are not knowing. Even having expectations is knowing in the sense of what we mean when we talk about not knowing. So I love Sokyo's answer about how, her expectations have, in a sense, diminished, and she's learning to live in the aliveness of not having those expectations. To address how I've seen her, with that, and I don't think I know that you won't object to anything I'm about to share, Sokyo. So yeah, I'll be very, very respectful. I was curious about how Sokyo has really maintained and even deepened that mind of not knowing. And one thing I saw when she came back, like her presentation that she did a few weeks ago, after 3 years, was far deeper than the one that she gave a year in 2 years previously. And you said that yourself, Sokyo, that it was completely different, really, the level that you had gotten to. And you just mentioned it in your response. But also, as you were giving your presentation, I did have this question, which was, and I asked Sokyo when we met a few days after she gave her presentation, and I was curious whether there was a degree to which she actually had gone on some level of autopilot with her new mode, like in the life that you're living, you have to have routines, right? To feed the cats and feed yourself and get the gas and fix the vehicle, and then you have routines for finding places and going places. So it's impossible almost to like wake up without any plans or agendas and with complete freshness. And I was very curious, and I asked you, to what degree there was that sort of perhaps a new routine that had come in that perhaps was a layer from your mind of not knowing, layering away from your freshness. And I loved your answer. It was you were really cognizant of, well, actually, when I first pull into a place, the sun, I don't know where the sun is going to come up. So my disorientation is profound. It's like, what window is coming in? When we're all of us who have our routines, we know when the sun is going to come up. So our whole bodies and minds are oriented towards, certain elemental experiences that are happening. And that was changing for you, so rapidly, you know. Um, but there was a level at which you would get, you would find your place in the orientation of that elemental place, and you would be able to orient to it. But it seems to be, just extraordinarily fresh, you
Mhm.
know, on a certainly a day-to-day basis, and then almost like an hour-to-hour basis. So
Yeah,
yeah,
very much. It reminds me of, even if I camp for a while in one place and start to gain that orientation,
mm,
as soon as I move, all of that is
yeah,
completely different, and that has to do with everything. But the light is the most profound, because some places where I camp, the morning light comes through on the kitchen side of the bus, and
right,
places I camp, it comes through the back or it comes through the front. And then there's different temperature shifts because of that and different
yeah,
things happen. So every time I move, it's that all of those orientations and frameworks of fixity are just being disrupted all the time. And it reminds me a little bit of what I remember hearing early on of the role of a Zen teacher is to continually be
mm,
pulling the rug out from under you
mm.
over and over and over again, until there is no rug.
Yeah, exactly.
It has kind of that quality of the world is continually pulling the rug out from under me over and over and over again because of the way I'm living. Though I think it's possible, that comes back to my initial comment of we can disrupt our
Yeah.
habit mind in lots of different ways. Um, there's an artist from the 50s, Guy Debord, who had a practice called psychogeography, and he and his artist mates would, for example, they would go to Berlin and they would take a map of Paris to navigate Berlin. And or they would take a painting, a Kandinsky painting or something, and they would go, "Oh, you see that red line in the painting? That's that red line on that building there."
Nice,
They had
nice.
to make strategies for disrupting their habit mind, that I
Yeah.
think we've all come up with. Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting close to the end here, but I wanted to respond again to that and say that Sokyo's response to me then, and I think perhaps maybe hers now, may be inspiring you and reminding you, as it reminded me, of those moments where I wake up in my bed and I don't know where I am. Right? It might be from maybe an illness is like fuzzing my brain, or deep meditation. This happens during session, is there's that liminal place of like, wow, where am I? And then everything becomes very intimate and very, very acute, in experience. And Sokyo is experiencing that almost every day, so continuously. And it reminded me to maintain and practice that mind, to cultivate that mind of not just fixing my understanding of, oh, of course, here I am right here, and believing so strongly in that orientation in time and space and life, that my default mode network is needing to impose upon me, but to maintain the freshness. And that's what our practice is. It's all about. It's to step in and in over and over into that freshness of presence.
There's a wonderful quote from Wim Wenders, the filmmaker that I had come across early on, way before I started Zen practice, but has always stuck with me. And he says, to see the world, as if you were a child opening your eyes for the first time.
Yeah, yeah, good. So was our time an hour on this, Sokyo? Is it? Okay.
Yeah, this has been wonderful, though. I can't believe we're already at an hour. It feels like we could just hang out all day and talk. I like this. Thank you. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. Lovely session. It's good to see all of you. I hope you got something from it. And do we have any announcements for the One Body Sangha you'd like to give, Sokyo?
Thank you all for being here today. Again, we'll be recording this and share the link to this, as well as the link for our Sangha gathering and practice discussion from last week. I know many of you were there for that as well. We had a wonderful discussion about our place of practice. So you can check out the recording for that. It'll probably be in a few days and we'll send an email. Coming up, our weekly sittings continue. We have a wonderful regular group of folks sitting almost every day together now, and grateful for the growing Sangha. Our next program, we actually do have a retreat scheduled next weekend, which is in partnership with Eon Zen. That's an Enter Here Zazen Kai, which is geared towards those who are newer to practice or maybe haven't joined in retreat form before, though it's open to anyone. And then our next Sangha gathering will be August 2nd, the first Saturday of each month. And again, we'll have a topic for that, really viewing that as a time to come together and talk about our practice together. And then we have a Dharma dialogue the Saturday after that, August 9th, and that will be with our other practice leader, with Lisa Gakyo Shewi, and we look forward to that as well. So that's what's coming up. Thank you all for being here. It's nice to see your faces and receive your questions and to be with you, Gyodo Sensei. Thank you so very much for this dialogue and all of your teachings. Appreciate it.
Take care.